Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so honored to be here to talk about my presentations. I'm Shirin. I'm a Chinese teacher from Shatin Chongchen School, which is a primary local school in Hong Kong. And I have divided the presentations into 4 parts. First, I will talk about the purpose and design of the study. And then I will talk about the findings from students' work, and we're going to discuss how is the visual feedback works. And finally, I will come to the conclusion and some suggestions for the further research. Okay, let's talk about the purpose of study. And I know many research studies found that the positive effect on the learning is maximized when students understand and engage with the feedback. But in the reality, teachers' feedback, especially for writing, is very not clear and unable for the students to make the improvements based on the feedback. Meanwhile, research shows that the new technology can enhance feedback practices for both efficiency and efficacy. But there is a gap between the research and study. There's so limited research focused on the actual impact of technology enhanced feedback on students' self-regulated writing. So in this study, I will try to find out how the visual feedback can help students to adopt the self-regulated writing strategy. My study is rather a small size action research that I will try to find the impacts of the visual modes on my primary 5 students with the visual feedback in different writing process. And I will try to use the eLearning tool. It's called Explain Everything to record my visual feedback for students. So let's talk about the design of the study. First, I will ask students to finish the P-test, is write a narrative test. And then I will use the Explain Everything to record the visual explanations, especially focus on the generic framework and the main writing skills. I will try it later in next sessions. And then the visual explanations will become the writing standards, which is the rubrics, to allow the students to watch the visual explanations based on their needs. And after that, I will ask students to do some revision for both group and the individual review and revisions. And I will give the individual visual feedback for the writing assignments, which is the visual demonstrations for them to mainly focus on the guided questions, but not just give them the feedback to rewrite the articles. After that, they will have the post-test. So there is the methodology. I will divide the students into 2 groups. The one is experimental group and another one is the control group. The experimental group will receive the visual feedback and written feedback in tandem, but the control group just will receive the written feedback from the writing assignments. And how to review the visual feedback, I will try to analyze the students' revisions of the test to see whether they can revise it by themselves by using the rubrics. And there's the individual revisions before students receive the visual feedback. I will teach them the CDO revision strategies. There are two main focuses on the writing. The one is the writing skills, we call lyrical. In Chinese, is like 界定抒情. And another focus is on the generic structures, which is the traits. And these two diagrams, I will use it in the visual feedback videos for them. This is their first time to do the revisions by using CDO revisions strategy. And I have found that students can diagonalize the errors from the task 1 and task 2 by comparing the differences by using the rubrics, these two diagrams. Both skilled writer or the students with medium ability or the novel writer, all of them can rewrite the, can detect the errors from the task 2, but the revision operations, the quality is varied with students. So after that, they will receive the writing assignments. After the revision, they need to write the writing assignments. And there is the visual feedback for the students. The visual feedback is, I've recorded the feedbacks for them. And in tandem, I have also write the feedbacks for them. So all of them will receive the both written and visual feedback for the experimental group. Maybe I will introduce the visual feedback. In the visual feedback, I will not give them the direct feedback or the methods for them to rewrite their articles. I'll just give them the generic framework, rubrics, and strategies with guide questions. Maybe you can watch one of the example. But the video is in Chinese. I will show you a little bit of this. So many in the visual feedback, I will just show them or to guide them to remind them with the rubrics and the guided questions for the for them, mainly focus on the generic framework and the writing skills. And then they need to operate a CDO strategy, but I will not tell them directly, just show them the guided questions. Okay, I will take the students' work for the examples. And after the student received the revisions, the visual feedback, she revised the articles again. She told me she watched the visual feedback for 5 times. And then I found that the writing skills and the structures improve a lot for these students. So this is some statistics for the study. We can see the visual feedback and written feedback for the students who receive the visual feedback and written feedback in tandem. Their post-test standard deviation is 4. Besides the students who just received the written feedback only just 5.4. And the t-test value is the p-value is 12%. The results of t-test and if indicates that the null hypothesis is rejected and the alternative hypothesis is accepted. That means the visual feedback can help students to do the revision more efficiently, which is and there's some results for the interviews with students. So most of them, they agree that the visual feedback can help them to revise the test. But some students will just they disagree with the standards of narrative writing, and some of them think they cannot diagnose the errors of tests. So after the post-test, I have let them to do the group revisions and individual revision for the post-test. Because before the post, at the beginning of the designs, I just gave them to do the individual revisions. So after the post-test, they need to do the group revisions, and also based on the generic focus and the writing skills, which is lyrical. And this is the individual revision for the post-test, which is the example I showed before. And the content should be is more vivid, and the language used is more lyrical, which is can meet the standards of the writing assignments. So based on the findings and analysis of the students' work, I have found some discussion point for all of us. For students can revise their tests according to the guided questions for both experimental and control group. The students who received visual feedback, they were told me they can find it more useful because they can watch the videos repeatedly until they understand or until they can know how to do the revisions. And the students, all of the students from both experimental group and control group, they can detect the errors from their tests after the interviews. And students can revise the test by using the rubrics afterwards, but the quality of the revision is still varied with students. And in this case, I found that the students whose revision is not very good, they are not motivated to revise their tests. And one of the students who received the visual feedback, she told me she didn't like the visual feedback. She just preferred the written feedback. So I found there is limitations for this from this study. The first one is the sample size is rather too small because I just asked my my class to participate in this study, and the test type is limited because I just used the narrative test, asked them to do the p-test and post-test, and the last one is very important because the experimental group student received the visual feedback. The videos is like 5 to 7 minutes, but I need to use for half an hour to record the visual feedback for each student. So I think it's very time consuming. There's some suggestions for further research. The first one is I think we can have further research with another type of test, so then we can evaluate the visual feedback, how the visual feedback can affect students' self-regulated writing in different types of tests. And I think the motivation and learning style is also should be counted as a factor for students to develop their self-regulated writing development. And the last one, how to make the visual feedback more in a more practical way. I think we can use the race model to help with this. The race model is the model that can focus the best method to apply, integrate, and the technology to improve students' learning outcomes. Besides, I think we can use the technology tools like the e-platforms to help students to interact more. So afterwards, I think I will start another stage of the study. I will use the visual feedback for the three types of tests. I will not record all the visual feedback for all students, but I will choose the most typical one. The one is skill raters, and other one the test is medium ability, and other one is from the novel writer, and then these videos will become the resources for students to study. They need to watch it like as the flipped classroom, and then they need to do the individual revisions. When they finish the revision, they need to share with the students, which can enhance the collaborations with others. So I also will focus on how they can revise the articles by themselves to see whether their self-regulated strategy development will be improved by using this model. So it's all of my presentation. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Ms. Lau. Okay, I think we have some short time for a Q&A session. You can raise your hand and speak up, or type your questions in chat box.
Oh.
Well, I see a question from Florence, and her question is, why did you decide to give the visual feedback in the first place? And do you plan to continue to give visual feedback in the future?
Yes, I will. Actually, the students' work can reflect that they can improve the self-regulated writing. After giving them the visual feedback, I will continue to do this, but I will try to use another methods to give them as a flipped classroom for them to study, and also I can see how they can revise based on the visual feedback videos. And other questions, why did I decide to give the visual feedback in the first place? Because some students told me they did not understand what is my feedback means. Sometimes usually Chinese teachers, you like to write so many feedbacks for them, especially their writing. But actually students told me they don't understand why teacher you rewrite this sentence for me. So I think maybe we can use the feedback in a more wise way. I don't know. But yes, I agree that the visual feedback is very time consuming. So yeah, so how to make it practical is very important.
Yeah, I think it's a nice try, but I'm afraid it's time for the end of the session. So anyone, if you have any questions for the presenters today, you can leave your questions in the chat box. So thank you everyone for joining the session. And